And hello, everyone. My name is Leventhal. I'm a senior vice president at Highwire PR, which is a PR firm that works with innovators across many industries, including healthcare and security. And that's why the two guests that we've invited on for today's discussion, we know very well. Kelly Jackson Higgins, she's the executive editor of Dark Reading, incredibly well known in the security industry for her leadership on the media side and her influence. And we're pleased to welcome as well Rajiv Leventhal, who's the managing editor of Healthcare Innovation. He joins us from just outside New York. Likewise, very well known within the healthcare space as someone who really gets the information that matters out to key constituencies and is a key influencer. The topic today is to talk about how the role of industry media for these two key target markets, healthcare and security, has changed, and what PR people can learn from the way that those roles have changed. It's part of the Highwire series, PR Forever Change, that explores how the way that we work and the way that we can work better has changed for the better over the last 6-7 weeks or so. So, Kelly, why don't I start with you? Obviously, first of all, want to make sure everyone is healthy and well through this, and thinking about everyone. You learn a lot about perspective and what really matters. But you find yourself in a critical business still, which is getting important information out to key audiences that care about keeping our systems secure. There's a lot of people working from home. People, I'm sure, are more interested in reading what you have to say more than ever, reading what your reporters have to say more than ever. How has your role changed over the last 2 months?
That's an interesting question. We actually were just talking the other day about stepping back for the past 2 months. When this first all hit, we had to sort of separate the COVID coverage. It was a separate thing. It was new, right? It was all about workers being sent home to work from home for the first time, what security technologies and threats were going to be involved. We had to watch all of that. And now, maybe a few weeks in, we realized this is actually part and parcel of everything now. It's not just a separate thing. So we started looking at it a little bit differently. Luckily, all of the Dark Reading staff already works from home. So there was no adjustment for us, and our workflow is the same. But I would say now we look at things differently in terms of strategies that our readers might want to see. Our core reader is a security professional. So the initial concern for them was, I have a staff that's just moved home. I have to get them the right technology, get them all onboarded. How do I do that? Then it was, what are the threats now that I have to look for that I have more of now with more work from home employees and users? And then it kind of went to, we're looking now at the financial impact. Budgets are going to be affected. Vendors' budgets are going to be affected. So what does that mean? And then long term, we're looking more now at business continuity, because I think this gave businesses a whole new reality check on planning, almost like another element of disaster recovery for security. So it's not just responding to an incident, but it's having a plan the next time something like this happens, or how you map out your strategy for users and security in the future. So I think we're looking at things differently in a lot of ways. In some ways, it's the same threats are happening, just at a different level. But we're trying to make sure that we don't just have everything COVID interconnected in our stories, that we're just talking about that. But we're talking about, this is a whole new world now. And even beyond next year, it's going to make people look at things differently. So we're trying to keep that perspective in our coverage. And making sure that we're meeting, answering questions for the people out there who are in the trenches trying to figure this thing out.
Right. And one thing that's notable for you, I'm sure, is you're not only trying to report on news that's of interest to businesses as they go through new challenges and explore this new normal, but you yourself are trying to put in place the infrastructure and solutions to manage this new normal as well, which is kind of an interesting perspective to be in.
Yeah, and I'm executive editor. I'm also a reporter, so I do kind of both sides of the house. So trying to help everybody plan how we plan our stories has gotten different. It's gotten more involved in not just reacting to what the COVID crisis did, but how it shapes things. And I think we're going to see a lot of. I think it's going to go way beyond this year. In other words, so we've been really thinking a lot about that.
Rajiv, talk through how things have changed for you and your role covering innovation on the front lines on the healthcare side.
Yeah, so like Kelly, in the beginning, I'd say in early March, when it started to become a pretty consistent news story, it was a little slow. Being in the trade and B2B, you can't cover things the way the mainstream covers it because your audience is different. So we were thinking a little bit about how can we shape our stories, and this was, remember, as it was first emerging. So we're not publishing information on death toll statistics, for example, or how maybe different states are reacting differently. Though that's for a different element of the media and of the news coverage. So it was a little slow at first, and then mid-March hit, and it was an absolute tidal wave in terms of how our coverage shifted. We kind of went all COVID all the time, and it's been that way for about 7 or 8 weeks. Our readers have really, really strong interest in some of the ways technology and healthcare are intersecting, within this pandemic. So, for example, covering telehealth and virtual care, which has become a common term in the last 8 weeks. On the health IT side, we've been talking about this for a decade, but just covering that angle and how clinicians and others on the front line are moving in-person care to virtual care has been of such high and keen interest to our readership, who are often clinical informatics executives, but expands beyond that. But that's a big part of our audience. So yeah, we have gone really heavy with COVID. Our readership has responded to it. Our COVID stories, we've created a COVID page on our website, and those hits have been significantly higher than really any other topic area for our website. We've also shaped some of our virtual events that we're planning on in the future to cover COVID, and again, talking with clinicians and those on the front lines who are dealing with this. And there was a real thirst among our audience to hear from people who are can explore and examine and give us some intel on some of their really important lessons learned over the last several weeks. We have dedicated e-newsletters, which previously were varying among different subjects, or are pretty much predominantly COVID focused now, not 100%, but pretty close to it. And we just feel as a publication, our role is to be an educator and an information gatherer and sharer for our audience, who are probably as busy, if not more busy and more overwhelmed than ever before. And I think we play a pretty important role in the trade and being that facilitator to share with them some of the innovations and some of the lessons learned from others that are telling us. And it's, as I was saying before, it's been responded to, I think, in a really positive way. The amount of coverage and the quality of coverage we've been able to put out there in the last several weeks.
Yeah, an interesting point you make, Jonah, Rajiv, related to the traffic to COVID-related stories. Kelly, you were mentioning how you're going through this process of trying to figure out what the right level of COVID-related coverage is. Can you walk through that a little bit? Have you sensed that there is a right amount, or there's is there an insatiable appetite for COVID-related coverage, or is that kind of pulled back a little bit among your viewership and readership?
It's actually, I don't think it's declined. I think we're just trying to measure how we do it. We actually have a landing page where we put all of our COVID-specific related stories in one place, and we're starting to wonder, almost everything's related to COVID. Do we need a separate page? So we're kind of looking at that right now because it's shaping so much of the technology and some of the threats. But I wouldn't say the interest is out there. I think everyone's still figuring out, how they handle the threats, how they handle the whole logistics of users. We've done, I would say, we do a lot of stories every day on it. I mean, there's interest out there. There's a lot happening, as you know. But I don't think there's a waning interest. I think it's part of our world now, part of our reality. How do we take it to the next level, I guess, is what we're trying to figure out in terms of our coverage and how we look for answering questions for things that security professionals need to know as they adapt to this new world.
Another topic I wanted to ask you about, let's start with Rajiv. So typically you would use a physical event to kind of meet face-to-face with key sources. And obviously that opportunity doesn't exist anymore. So what are some ways that you're trying to at least maintain relationships with the sources you have or find new ones?
Yeah, and it's really interesting for us too, because a big part of our business, we develop and sponsor about a dozen small healthcare meetings around the country each year, and we've been doing this for going back 5-6 years. And we've obviously, just like everybody else in the event space, had to push a lot back from the spring, and we're hopefully planning on doing some physical ones later this year in the fall and winter. But we've had robust ongoing discussions about virtual gatherings, virtual meetings, and I think the important element here is, not whether it's in person or virtual, but what type of education can you share? What type of networking can you provide an opportunity for? And that can happen through different modalities. It doesn't have to be in person. We've targeted our closest friends and constituents, and those who have been a part of our events for years, and we're just letting them know that we're here, we're not going anywhere. We still see ourselves as an influencer in the space, and we will provide you with the latest updates, the latest coverage, really important information for you. And yes, we might have to push back half a dozen events or what have you, but we will try to make up for that content in other ways through other channels, and virtual events are one big way we plan to do that going forward.
Kelly, obviously Black Hat, no more, not that that's a surprise, but in your world, what new techniques are you kind of investigating or taking advantage of to try to cultivate the sources that you use and your staff uses?
Well, as you can imagine, the security industry is very much event-oriented. We have big events that are great for networking and seeing people, and we kind of saw this, this was sort of evolving, that we wouldn't have maybe some of the big ones. So I think Dark Reading has always done virtual events anyway. We'll be doing more of those probably now. So we have a pretty good experience with those. That's something we do at least a few times a year. So we feel comfortable with that way to at least, be involved with the online presentation side of things. In terms of our sources, I think we're all probably doing more outreach than ever, since we won't see them physically. We've been talking about that recently. Just make sure that you're still keeping, in touch with people more than we did before, probably. I would say I'm doing more phone calls than I've ever done in a long time, and also more of these video calls, which I think we all kind of avoided in the past, but everyone's doing now because they need to see people's faces. So I think we're doing probably more outreach than ever to talking to people in the industry as much as we can.
Got it. And sticking with you for a second, is there a new role or a new opportunity for PR people to help make sure you're meeting those new sources? I mean, what advice would you give to PR people to best help you given this reality?
Yeah, I guess, I was thinking about, in terms of pitches, we get, I would say, just so many pitches a day, dozens and dozens of pitches a day, right? We get, at least I do, they filter through me. And just sort of, we want to talk to certain people, like we want the right people to talk to, in other words. So if we get a pitch for a story, we want to make sure we're talking to the person at the right level who can really speak to what our readers need to know. So I think it's helpful for people who maybe we would normally have met at a conference that were really good people in an organization that a PR person represents. If they could make those people available to us now between this period where we can't see them and have an opportunity to meet them face to face, or if it's people that we know and we just need to usually check in with them at a conference, but at this point to be able to maybe talk to them, just even have a conversation about things going on, not necessarily for a story per se, but just kind of catching up on some of the trends we're seeing, some of the things they're seeing out there. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I think we're all trying to figure out ways to keep connected, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and make sure you stay on the pulse of what's happening, right? Because things are changing all the time. That's always been the case in security, but more so now than ever.
Every day is different. So.
And Rajiv, for you, what's kind of the best? What are some advice you have for PR people in terms of the ways to make sure we're helping you in the best way we can with the sources we have?
Yeah, similarly, we get a ton of pitches every day, more so now with COVID, and there's a few elements here. So, I think it's important to kind of choose value over, profitability. Think critically about, the pitch angle that you're going to craft and the story that you want us to help you tell. I think these are really important things, especially now. If you just look across the economy, you see, unfortunately, the devastating financial crisis that this has had on not just healthcare, but all businesses. And, it might not be the best time, to pitch like a technology that, sounds like a commercial, but think about a critical way where we can, incite be insightful and tell this story together that provides that educational and an important component that can look at the lessons learned and the innovation that's taken place without it being it's a sensationalized pitch or anything like that. And then also think about your audience and think about the news cycle and how there's so much breaking news and so much is changing every day, and maybe rather than wanting your client to be in that space, it's thinking about the ramifications and how this story might unfold beyond that breaking news aspect the first day, and going down the days and weeks down the line. What are the ramifications of this? Let's dig deeper into the analysis, and I think that's a good way to again go back to thinking about really how to critically think about how to tell this story rather than maybe just be the first one, but dig deeper. And I think those are important factors and important elements that have always existed in the PR media world, but ones that are more important and heightened now more than ever.
Well, Rajiv, Leventhal, thank you very much. Kelly Jackson Higgins, really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and wish you a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.